Okay, welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. We're tackling something today that I know a lot of you are interested in. It's weight loss, but more specifically, it's how to lose weight in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Not just to look better,
Right.
but to actually improve your overall health and well-being. And we've gotten tons of feedback from you guys wanting us to really get to the bottom of this. So no fluff today, just straight to the point, actionable information that you can start using right away.
Exactly.
And we've got a fantastic resource for this. We found this podcast, and they just have a really practical, no-nonsense approach to weight loss advice. So our mission today is to sift through all that and pull out the most important, the most useful insights to help you lose weight effectively and sustainably. And of course, without overwhelming you with information.
It's a great mission, I think. It's so important to be able to sift through all the noise, right, all the advice that's out there, and really find the gems, the things that are actually backed by evidence and then that actually work. So I'm excited to dive in.
Let's do it. So first things first, I think it's important to establish why we're even talking about weight loss specifically for health, right? I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the aesthetic aspects of it, wanting to look a certain way.
Yeah.
But this podcast really drives home the point that the primary reason to focus on weight loss is to improve your overall health and well-being.
Absolutely.
Like, that should be the #1 goal.
I think so, too. And, it's interesting because the podcast, it kind of reframes the whole weight loss conversation.
Right.
It's not about fitting into a smaller size or achieving some arbitrary number on the scale.
Yeah.
It's really about reducing your risk of serious health problems. It's about having more energy. It's about feeling better in your body every day. And I think that's a really powerful shift in perspective.
It is. And the podcast goes on to outline some of those pretty serious health risks that are linked to excess weight. Things like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, even joint pain, which can really affect your quality of life.
Absolutely. And those are not just minor inconveniences. Those are major chronic conditions that can seriously impact your life expectancy and your quality of life as well.
Yeah, and what's really encouraging is that you don't need to lose a huge amount of weight to start seeing those benefits.
Right. The podcast mentions this incredible statistic.
Right.
That losing even a relatively small amount of weight, like 5 to 10% of your body weight, can lead to significant improvements in your health. Like we're talking lower cholesterol, lower blood pressure, reduced risk of those chronic diseases we were just talking about.
Yeah, and it's such a small amount, relatively speaking,
It is.
that it feels so much more achievable than, some massive weight loss goal. Totally. And I think what's happening there is that 5 to 10%, it really targets that visceral fat, which is the fat that kind of surrounds your organs. It's that metabolically active fat that can really cause problems. So even a small reduction there can have a big impact.
Okay, that's good to know. It makes it feel a little less daunting, right?
I think so.
Now, the podcast goes on to outline some foundational principles for effective and sustainable weight loss. What are the key areas, the key pillars that they focus on?
They highlight 3 main areas that I think really make sense,
Okay.
when you think about it. The first one is nutrition, which, kind of goes without saying, but they go really in depth on what that actually means.
Right.
The second is exercise. And they really emphasize that it's not just about exercise, it's about movement.
Okay.
Finding ways to move your body regularly.
I like that.
And then the third one, and I think this one is often overlooked, is mindset.
And consistency? Yes, exactly. Mindset and consistency. Because you can have the perfect diet and the perfect exercise routine.
Right.
But if you're not in the right headspace, if you're not consistent with your efforts, it's not going to work.
Makes total sense. Okay, let's start with nutrition. What are some of the key takeaways from the podcast in terms of what we should be eating?
Well, the main message is pretty simple, really.
Yeah.
It's about focusing on whole, unprocessed foods.
Okay.
And avoiding, or at least limiting, the processed stuff.
So what does that look like in practice?
So think about things like lean protein, chicken, fish, beans, lots of vegetables and fruits, whole grains like brown rice, quinoa, oatmeal, healthy fats like avocados, nuts, olive oil.
Got it.
And then on the flip side, you want to try to avoid or limit things like processed meats, sugary drinks, packaged snacks, anything that comes in a box or a bag.
Right.
and it has a long list of ingredients that you can't pronounce.
Right, that makes sense. So it's really about quality over quantity.
Exactly.
It's not just about counting calories. It's about making sure those calories are coming from nutrient-rich sources.
Exactly. Because when you're eating whole, unprocessed foods, you're getting more nutrients per calorie.
Okay.
And that's what helps your body function properly, feel satisfied, and maintain a healthy weight.
So moving on to exercise, or movement as they call it, what are they recommending there?
Well, they emphasize that movement is essential for both weight loss and overall health.
Okay.
And they recommend aiming for at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity on most days of the week.
Okay, and what does moderate intensity look like?
So it's basically anything that gets your heart rate up and makes you breathe a little harder.
Okay.
So think brisk walking, jogging, cycling, swimming, dancing.
Right.
Anything you enjoy and can do consistently.
And it doesn't have to be super intense workout?
No, not at all.
It can be things that you enjoy, that you can fit into your daily routine?
Exactly. And that's really important, because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to stick with it.
Makes sense. And then there's the mindset and consistency piece, which, as you said, is often overlooked.
It is, and it's so important because, we can have all the knowledge in the world about what to eat and how to exercise.
Right.
But if we're not mentally prepared for the journey, if we're not committed to making those changes consistently, we're not going to succeed.
So what are some tips for cultivating that right mindset?
Well, the podcast talks about the importance of setting realistic expectations.
Okay.
Understanding that weight loss is a journey. It's not a quick fix.
Right.
It's going to have ups and downs. There will be times when you slip up.
Yeah.
And that's okay. The important thing is to get back on track and keep going. They also emphasize the importance of practicing patience and self-compassion. Not beating yourself up if you don't see results right away or if you make a mistake. And then celebrating those small victories along the way.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
It is, because it helps you stay motivated.
Right.
It reinforces those positive behaviors.
Okay, now, the podcast also talks about some common pitfalls, right? Some mistakes that people often make when trying to lose weight.
They do.
Yeah.
And I think these are really helpful to be aware of, because we all fall into these traps sometimes.
Right.
So one of the biggest ones they talk about is skipping meals.
Right.
A lot of people think that if they skip a meal, they'll consume fewer calories.
Yeah.
But it can actually backfire.
How so?
Well, when you skip meals, your body goes into starvation mode.
Okay.
And it starts slowing down your metabolism to conserve energy.
Oh, so that's not good.
And then you end up feeling more hungry later on.
Yeah.
And you're more likely to overeat.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about those fad diets?
Yeah, the podcast is very cautious about fad diets.
Okay.
Those diets that promise rapid weight loss by eliminating entire food groups or drastically restricting calories.
Right.
They might work in the short term,
Yeah.
but they're not sustainable. And they can actually be harmful to your health.
Okay, so what's the alternative?
The alternative is to find a way of eating that's balanced, that includes all the food groups in moderation, and that you can stick with long term.
Right, it has to be sustainable.
Exactly.
Okay, another thing the podcast mentions is sleep.
Yes, sleep is so important.
And how does sleep tie into weight loss?
Well, when you don't get enough sleep, your body produces more of the hormone ghrelin,
Okay.
which stimulates your appetite.
Oh, so you're hungrier.
Exactly. And it also produces less of the hormone leptin,
Which does what?
which signals to your brain that you're full.
Ah, okay.
So you end up feeling more hungry and less satisfied.
Interesting.
And that can lead to overeating.
Okay, that's a good reminder to prioritize sleep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sleep is crucial.
And then there's the issue of liquid calories, which I think a lot of people don't even think about.
Right. Liquid calories can really sneak up on you.
In what way?
Well, think about things like soda, juice, even some smoothies.
Okay.
They can be loaded with calories, but they don't fill you up the same way that solid food does.
Oh, I see.
So you can easily consume a lot of calories without even realizing it.
That's a good point. Okay, so we've talked about what to do, what to avoid. Now, let's get into some more practical strategies for making lasting changes.
Sure.
What are some concrete things that people can start doing today?
Well, one of the simplest but most effective things is portion control.
Okay.
You don't necessarily have to count calories, but just being mindful of how much you're putting on your plate.
Right.
Using smaller plates can help.
Okay.
Eating slowly and chewing your food thoroughly.
Right.
Paying attention to your body's signals of fullness.
Yeah, so really being present when you're eating.
Exactly.
What else?
Hydration is huge. Making sure you're drinking enough water throughout the day.
Why is that so important?
Well, it helps you feel full
Oh,
which can prevent overeating,
right.
and it also helps your body function properly,
Okay,
supports your metabolism,
got it.
and then meal prepping.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It really is. Taking some time on the weekend to plan and prepare your meals for the week can save you so much time and hassle during the week,
Right.
and it helps you make healthier choices.
Because you're not just grabbing whatever's convenient.
Exactly.
Okay, what about exercise? Any tips for making that more sustainable?
Well, the key is to find activities that you enjoy.
Right, that's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
So experiment with different things.
Okay.
Try different classes, find a workout buddy,
Yeah.
whatever it takes to make it fun.
Okay, and what about accountability? How can people stay accountable to their goals?
Well, there are a few different ways.
Okay.
Finding a support system is really helpful.
Like a friend, family member?
Yeah, a friend, family member, a support group,
Mm.
someone who can encourage you and hold you accountable.
Okay.
Tracking your progress can also be helpful.
Like in a journal or an app?
Exactly. It helps you stay aware of your habits and see how far you've come.
Got it. Now, let's talk about the mental aspect of weight loss.
Okay.
Because we know that it's not just about the physical changes.
Absolutely.
It's also about the mental shifts.
It's a huge part of it.
So, what are some things that people can do to cultivate the right mindset?
Well, the podcast talks about the importance of setting SMART goals.
Oh, yeah. SMART goals.
Have you heard of those?
I have.
Okay, so SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Okay.
And when you set goals that meet those criteria, it makes them much more likely to be successful
Mm-hmm.
because they're clear, they're focused,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a deadline.
Makes sense. What else?
Visualization.
Ah, visualization.
Yeah, so taking some time each day to visualize yourself achieving your goals,
Okay.
feeling healthy and confident.
Right.
It can really help to reinforce those positive thoughts and behaviors.
Interesting.
And it can help you stay motivated.
Okay.
And then rewarding yourself.
Rewards are always good.
But the key is to find rewards that aren't food related. So things like a new workout outfit,
Yeah.
a massage, a weekend getaway,
Okay.
anything that you enjoy and that supports your goals.
So you're not sabotaging your progress with food rewards.
Exactly.
Okay. And lastly, the podcast talks about self-compassion.
Yes, self-compassion is crucial
Why is that?
because weight loss is a journey and there will be bumps along the way.
Right.
There will be times when you slip up,
Mm.
when you don't make the healthiest choices.
Yeah.
And that's okay. The important thing is to not beat yourself up about it,
Right.
to be kind to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
to learn from your mistakes and move on.
Okay, so big picture, it sounds like sustainable weight loss is about making gradual, manageable changes
Yes, absolutely.
to your lifestyle across different areas rather than going for some quick fix.
It's about making those changes a part of your daily routine, your habits.
Right, making them sustainable.
Exactly.
Okay, this has been so insightful. Thank you so much for breaking all of that down for us.
Of course, it was my pleasure.
And for all of you listening, as you think about everything we've talked about today, consider which of these tips you can start implementing right now.
Right.
Maybe it's focusing on eating more whole foods,
Yeah.
or finding a type of exercise you actually enjoy,
Mhm.
or practicing portion control, or setting a SMART goal.
It could even be as simple as just making sure you're drinking enough water throughout the day.
Yeah, even small changes can make a big difference over time.
They really can.
And remember, this is a journey. It's not a race.
Right.
So be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, and celebrate those small victories along the way.
Absolutely.
That's it for today. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Bye, everyone.